What's up? Joe here, Profit First Reseller. And I got a lot on my mind today, so while I'm working, I just thought I'd kind of dump out some thoughts to you about being an introvert, but also having entrepreneurial tendencies. So thought I'd just kind of share a little bit about my journey here in chat as I unload all these random controllers and stuff like that. Essentially, my main message, I'm going to cut straight to the point here, is I want to encourage, especially you introverts out there, that it's okay to not want employees. In fact, I would encourage you to maybe seek that path first, because bringing on employees as an introvert is hard. In fact, it's really hard anyway, I think. My wife, who's an extrovert, also would say that having employees was hard, but I think in a different way. So in this video, I'm just kind of giving my perspective. So just a quick background in my experience of having employees is that before my wife and I had this eBay business, we had a food cart, we had a Kickstarter campaign, I'm sure it's still online somewhere. And we started a food cart, we raised $6,000, which was not even close to enough money to start the business, but we put the rest, for my wife's savings that she had and then on our credit cards, and we refurbished an old food cart and we were selling food. And then we eventually expanded to have 3 food carts and then a full commercial restaurant space. And so that business lasted for 7 years or so. And we had a lot of employees all throughout, dozens and dozens of employees, up to maybe 15 or 20 full-time employees at once, maybe at our busiest. And I just had a lot to think about that, because I hear so many other eBay resellers with big dreams and big aspirations in a way that I can relate to. And I just kind of want to give my perspective that there are a lot of ways to achieve these monetary goals that don't involve scaling in the way that you think. So I basically wrote a list of pros and cons here of having an employee, of having employees as an introvert in my life, what I think about it. And I mean, the end result is that I don't plan to ever have employees again. And if I did, I would have to be in such a position in this business that I would be able to pay someone so much that by hiring them, it would almost instantly be taking a load off of my plate, if that makes sense, right? I think the typical employee you bring on, you teach them your systems. I'm thinking at this point, if I ever was going to have an employee, it might be something more like an assistant, an executive assistant, or someone that could really just help organize my life, or I don't know, something like where I could just pay them a lot to just take a lot of the complication out of my life. Because even though I'm constantly thinking about how to keep this as uncomplicated as possible, when you scale any kind of a business in any way, even without employees, it does get more complicated in a way. But I'm just really, and I'm again, our whole theme of this channel so far is that we're averaging $1,000 a day of eBay sales, and it's just my wife and I in the business here working from home. And this year we're way ahead of that. We're averaging way ahead of $1,000 a day. So that's pretty cool. And I just continue to be reminded that mastery is so underrated. Like, I think I'm kind of refocusing my goals a little bit. Like, I don't want an eBay empire. I want to be like that guy from that documentary called Ichiro Dreams of Sushi, that sushi master from Japan, who's just a master at his craft, and people come from all over the world to just watch him do his thing. That's actually what I want. And something that Seth Godin said, Seth Godin self-identifies. Seth Godin is a business guy. He's an author, a marketing guru, whatever you want to call him. He's done a lot of stuff all over social media, written a lot of best-selling books. And Seth Godin helped me kind of self-identify, because he also self-identifies as a freelancer instead of an entrepreneur. And I think entrepreneur is a term that gets thrown around. I lump myself in there all the time. But in fact, according to his definition, so his definition of freelancer is someone who gets paid when they work. And an entrepreneur is someone who has dreams bigger than themselves, wants to create something that's bigger. Yeah, just that simple. Who has dreams bigger than themselves. In fact, in a lot of ways, my dreams are local. I just want to be able to take care of my family. Right now, my kids are enough responsibility. I don't actually want any more complication in my life. I want to be more present for them while they're young. Maybe at some point, if I get really bored and my kids have moved out of the house, I'll consider maybe some business with employees again. That might take a lot of my time. But as I get into this, I start to see what I mean, and that it's hard to have that many people in your life that might need your attention urgently. And that is definitely something that we noticed. So towards the tail end of our last business, this food cart and restaurant business, we're now 6 years into this eBay business. This was years ago. We were just starting to have our kids. We have 3 kids now, as the restaurant business was kind of coming to a close. And I just noticed the amount of demand on my attention was only increasing, right? When you have employees that have your number, and of course they should, because you need to be there when complicated situations arise. You need to be there for questions. Nobody's training is complete, and it's very likely, I would say even often, that it is your fault as a boss that they even have questions in the first place because you didn't explain it properly the first time. So of course you need to be on call to answer all these questions. But then on top of that, when you have kids who are also, of course, asking you questions and having their own lives and needs, it just becomes a lot of demand on your attention. And as an introvert, that's extra hard, that's extra expensive. And I definitely noticed that as we started to kind of wind down the restaurant and wind up this eBay business here. So I'm gonna pull up on my phone here this little list that I made of pros and cons. And since it's so clear that I'm biased, I'm gonna start with the cons. And then when I do the pros, I only have 3 or 4 for each here. I realized with each of the pros, I was actually able to replicate those benefits of having employees in this current eBay business, just in slightly different ways maybe, but without some of those downsides. So I'll get into that, but I'm gonna start with the cons here. So the first con of having employees as an introvert that I've noticed is that vacations became very complicated. It was really hard to actually take a break when we had employees. As an employee, I feel it is a little bit complicated to go on vacation when you have a boss to worry about. You have to ask your boss or your manager, can I have this time off? And it's maybe a yes or a no. But you kind of have to do that also as a boss with employees, but you kind of have to do that with everyone. So if you have more than a single employee, I would kind of argue that vacations are even more complicated than being an employee. And all of these are more complicated than our current situation, which is having 0 employees. And I can just set my eBay store on vacation mode anytime I want to and just go on vacation. I don't have to ask anybody. I mean, I have to talk to my wife, but we're the ones going on vacation together probably. So we're the ones planning it. There's no one else to have to ask. And I actually do appreciate that as an introvert, again, where social interaction can be just more taxing. I love hanging out with people. Our employees were amazing. Every single one of our employees was so incredible. I learned so much. I can't overstate how much it's developed me as a human. I hope that we were good bosses. We definitely tried, my wife and I. We ran that business together as well, and we tried our best, but it's hard. It's not, my gift is not necessarily people skills. My gift is fixing people's computers. Because I was into IT stuff when I was a kid. I read How to Win Friends and Influence Enemies, but that doesn't mean I read it because I needed to read it, because I didn't really understand people very much as a teenager. So vacations are complicated. That's the first con here. You got to ask a lot of people. Scheduling is hard. Scheduling in general is hard. When you have employees, managing everyone's schedules, because vacations being complicated when you have employees also means you have to be able to work around all of your employees' vacations. When they need time off, that means you might have to be working extra, have reduced income, have to reschedule, and all that is just extra time and attention away from the activities that allow you to make money or bring you joy. And again, if you really like this stuff, that's one thing, but I just realized that I'm not super into managing people. I don't actually like telling people what to do. I don't even like telling my kids what to do. I would just like to kind of carefully explain why we have certain rules in our house. But I don't like telling them what to do. I like to gently remind them, like, hey, it's 10 o'clock. You should probably start working on your chores. But I don't like to put myself in that position if I can help it. I just don't enjoy being in that position. And I realize that even as a boss, like, it's fun to feel important, I guess, but I didn't actually get a lot of joy out of that. So vacations are complicated. Scheduling is hard. Employee vacations are also a thing you have to tack on. That's the first con. The second con, I guess, is kind of obvious at this point from what I've been talking about, but it's simply that it did bring less freedom to my life. Like and of course, if you're profitable enough that your business runs without you completely and it's profitable, then of course, you put yourself in an incredible position, but that's incredibly rare. I mean, look at the statistics of how many small businesses make it at all. And then you got to assume only a fraction of those are making it without the boss involved. And then maybe it's more possible that for the bigger businesses, you can like make money without getting paid too much. But again, with that kind of scale, like how many years do you have to spend building that business to get up to the point? It becomes a complicated thing. And like, something that I really realized when I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss a long, long time ago is that it's not an optimal strategy to put off all of your life goals until retirement, because that's not guaranteed. What I took away from that book is not that I should only work 4 hours per week. Of course, given my lifestyle, I would hope not. I work way more than that. What I got from that was that you should focus on creating a lifestyle now, a life that you enjoy and that you wouldn't regret, to include the vacations, the traveling, whatever is going to cause you to be fulfilled. For me, it's the freedom. A little bit of background on me is that I was a homeschool kid. Like, I love being able to just wake up and just work on projects in my room. Like, that's still what I do to this day. I'm almost 40 years old. I'm 38, and I'm still waking up, making myself some breakfast, some oats, typically, or eggs, just like when I was a kid. And then I get to work in my room. I was the oldest kid as well, so I didn't often have people to ask questions of as much. It was more up to me to kind of figure it out a lot of the time. And I loved it. It really worked well for me. Homeschooling doesn't work for every kid, for sure, but it really worked well for me. And I kind of see eBay as a similar thing, right? It's just like a project of mine. It's just a project I get to work on. I love that freedom. As a homeschool kid, and just as an introvert in general, I don't think it matters so much about the homeschooling, but I appreciate having the freedom. One of the biggest things that I noticed when we closed down that restaurant, it was close to at its peak when we decided to close it down, and we gave everyone notice and everything, and worked hard to get everyone jobs, but it sucked and it was sad, and that was a responsibility that I feel like we took on, that we kind of failed in a way of giving people a wage. I think we've paid them fairly well we could, but we just couldn't continue it on as long as I wanted to, and that sucks. So I feel a lot of regret about that. And a lot of things about being a boss. Like, man, it's complicated. But what I noticed when we shut down the business was that my cell phone got so quiet. The calls from solicitors and laundry services and insurance. When you have a business open to the public, there's so many people that want to call you. And then again, from the employees, and I loved our employees. I loved talking to them, but that was also a time when we had young children, and I was already feeling overwhelmed. And all of a sudden my phone got quiet, and then it was just the cha-chings from my eBay app as I was starting to build my eBay business at the time. And that was a lot of fun and very rewarding. So obviously I still get a lot of joy out of that, although I've turned off the cha-chings years and years ago. I've turned off pretty much every notification on my phone. Like, life is, I really prioritize that quiet phone. I don't know if the only thing that really buzzes my phone is messages and calls from people on my contact list, and that's it. So it allows me to continue to make sure that I'm focused on what's important. So that's number 2. It's just the increased freedom, the quiet phone. That was that negative of having employees, that my life was a lot louder. There were a lot of more people asking for advice and calling and asking questions. And of course, as a good boss, you need to be available for that stuff. Just like as a good parent, you need to be available. But I just only have so much bandwidth, and I want to be there for my kids even more than my employees if possible. I mean, I did care about my employees, but I didn't find myself able to handle both. So number 3, Number 3 is so hard. And again, it's just partly because I am not a people expert, but like not very many of us are. And if you're bringing on other people into your business, I just realized that HR is really complicated. You know, I hope, and I do believe that most of our employees left having really positive experiences, but not all of them did. And we certainly had to let go our share of employees, but also some employees left because of the mistakes that we made. You know, there's this one situation that I always think about. Now, this is back, I think in 2019, there were some rallies going on in Portland. This was in Portland, Oregon. Some very political rallies and very racially motivated. And of course, in our restaurant, we were very, anti-racist and anti any shows of racism. And a lot of these demonstrations were kind of pro-racism, pretty clearly. And so during all these rallies and all this hype, and I didn't even know if the rallies had happened yet or if we were in the middle of it, one of our employees came up to me and asked, if I see anyone with tattoos, with certain tattoos that I identify as a certain political orientation, can I kick them out of the restaurant because I think that those people are racist? And I agreed with her that those people probably were racist, but I also don't necessarily want to kick someone out of my business that hasn't done anything racist. I mean, and then I said, can we wait and see if they act or speak in a way that would be offensive? And this employee said, well, no, if they're showing a certain kind of tattoo with a certain symbol, that's on purpose. They'd be covering it up. They know what they're doing. That in itself is racist. And I need to be able to preemptively kick people out that show this kind of symbol on their skin. And I ended the conversation not knowing and saying, for now, let's only kick people out who have displayed evidence in their actions or speech of racism. And maybe for certain tattoos, if we can just, if it is offensive, we can maybe ask them to cover it up if someone is offended by it. And I said I would look into it further and look into what these symbols meant. I'm not an expert on this stuff. And this employee ended up leaving pretty soon after, I think because they weren't satisfied, I think, with my response in this interaction. They didn't necessarily feel taken care of there at the restaurant, that they, weren't able to kick people out that might make them feel uncomfortable. And I'm, as a business owner, also thinking about lawsuits of discrimination and all these, I have to look up, are we even able to kick people out based on tattoos? If there's no words, if there's only symbols, I really felt like I need to do some research. And I just realized I was over my head. Having employees is hard. HR, this is HR. HR is people. HR is these complicated situations that come up. This person doesn't want to work with this person because they said this one thing about this TV show, but that says this about them. And so now we need to separate them, but maybe this person says that you need to get them off the schedule or they shouldn't be on the schedule with them at the same time. And all these things, this is typical HR problems, but I was in over my head. I realized this is not my expertise. I have certain loves. I love the logistics. I do love cooking. I love the science of food. I saw it more like a science equation, like chemistry, where we're combining ingredients, changing the molecular formulas and changing the actual literal chemical structure of these compounds to turn them into dishes for people and making them more healthy. But the people side, I had fun. I had fun hanging out with people. The good days were good. But the hard situations made me realize that is not my strength. I left those situations going, I don't know if I did the right thing or not. I still don't know if I did the right thing in that situation. I still think about it. That was really hard. And so, yeah, people are hard. HR is hard. Having employees is hard. To kind of, as somebody who's been there, especially when you have a business that's open to the public, it's just, there's a lot of responsibility. And I guess that goes into the fourth and final con of having employees. So the 4 cons so far have been vacations are harder, less freedom, HR, super complicated. And this last one is that you are responsible for other people's safety. In the restaurant business, it's not the most dangerous business in the world, but we were a business that was open to the public. Doors were unlocked. Anyone can walk in to that business, and you don't always know who's going to walk in. And there were some tough interactions, especially in the food carts, which was often, downtown, and it was just a whole range of customers, a whole range of people that you'd interact with. And early on, I feel horrible for this. Early on, we had a food cart that was downtown in downtown Portland. That was a tougher neighborhood. And it turns out one of the employees at the food cart next door to our food cart, it was in one of these, what they call food cart pods, where a bunch of food carts would line up in a parking lot. And the parking lot was basically rented out to all the food carts. So it would be us and a whole bunch of other food carts together, right? And so the food cart next door, apparently one of the employees had a substance abuse problem and was desperate. And so at the end of the day, it was the evening, it was getting dark. One of our employees, he was one of our managers at the time, was walking out of the food cart, out of the back door, and got hit in the back or the back of the head, not sure. And by the time he looked up, his backpack was gone. And the money, of course, from the day had been stolen. But more than that, like, this person had been attacked. And he called me, and I didn't know what to do. I said, do you want to go to the urgent care? I mean, let's go, I'll meet you there. And he said, no, I think I'm okay. I'll let you know. And these situations are hard, man. And there was another situation in our restaurant where we cooked with pressure cookers. So I don't know if you know what pressure cookers are, but they're essentially just a big old pot, either cast aluminum or stainless steel, with a lid with a gasket that seals it on tight, like, and it screws on sometimes or seals on with all these different mechanisms to kind of latch on, where that lid doesn't come off until you want it to, and it allows the steam and the pressure to build up inside. And it's actually quite dangerous. And so there are some safety mechanisms built in so the thing doesn't explode. Actually, there's a little bit of a rubber plug, and this comes into play in this story here. So the safety mechanism here is that the whole system should never get above 15 psi. That's how it's designed. And that's still quite a lot of pressure, but not, it's way less than your average bike tire, for example. But at 15 psi, if it does go above that, there's a little wiggler, and it goes tss, 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 and it lets off just a little bit of steam, and its whole job is to keep the thing regulated at 15 psi and to not go above that. Well, sometimes that regulator can fail, and so that happened one time in our restaurant in the years of doing business. That regulator did not let off enough pressure, and so the pressure raised above 15 psi in this pot. We were making bone broth, grass-fed beef bone broth at the time. And the pressure started to rise. And then the safety mechanism kicked in, so the thing didn't become a bomb. You don't want the actual pot to explode. So what happens is this little rubber plug is designed that around, maybe 18 or 20 psi, if it does get too high above 15, this little rubber plug will pop off, and it will cause a tiny little hole to open up in the lid, and that allows the steam and the excess pressure to escape. And apparently, because this happened one time, all the bone broth as well in a geyser of boiling hot liquid just shooting straight up. You hear a pop, and then you just see all this steam, and again, boiling hot broth just shooting up into the air, including some hot beef fat, like hot beef fat, like rendered beef tallow is what they used to like dump over the walls of the castles to stop invaders, right? Like, this stuff would really burn you. And I'm so glad that in this situation, nobody got hurt. And in the other situation too, there were no serious injuries. And these were two of the worst things that ever happened to us in the business I'm sharing here, but I'm just kind of sharing, like, these situations come up when you have other people on your watch, and the responsibility that you feel is enormous, that I felt. And the guilt, and just when other people's safety is your responsibility, there's a lot of things you need to think through. Thankfully, that bone broth was being cooked in a commercial kitchen. There was a stainless steel hood above it. There was nobody near it at the time. Of course, nobody would ever be standing directly over those appliances anyway when they're pressurized, because that would be dangerous. And it just shot up into the stainless steel hood, and we just had to take off the grills and clean everything. But everything was stainless steel, and nothing actually went that bad. We lost the batch of bone broth, obviously, and we learned how to better maintain those lids, and we were just very proactive in changing out all the parts to make sure that nothing would fail on those lids from that point on. It's hard to think of everything, and the more people that you bring on, the more scale involved, the more things that can go wrong that are your fault. And I still feel guilty that the business ended. We had employees, we were paying for them, we continued to pay the rate that we promised, of course, but then we couldn't anymore, and that was sad to me. I really enjoyed providing those businesses, but anyway, not sad that we did it. I'm not discouraging people from trying, but these are the kind of challenges that we went through, and that I, as an introvert especially, went through managing people and bringing people into my dream in a way. I love hanging out with my family. I'm much more of a family person, I've realized. Again, homeschool kid, big surprise. So I love running this business with my wife and getting my kids involved too. But I don't actually enjoy bossing people around. So even with my wife and my kids, it's more like, hey, here's some projects. If you guys want to help me, that's great. But I don't like telling any of them what to do. So I'd rather just be an example. So those are the 4 cons of having employees. But I want to talk about the pros too. Like, there are some great things. And so obviously so many people in this space think about hiring employees as an eBay seller. So here's some of the pros. So one of the pros that I noticed having employees that I loved, maybe the most, because I'm smiling even thinking about it, is the feeling of making money when you're not working. That feeling for those few minutes where nobody's bothering you, everything's going great, the numbers are up, there's enough customers walking in the door, you don't have an air conditioner repair looming, you don't have another, one of your best employees isn't about to quit and you're worried about replacing them. There were a few moments where there were like very few worries, and it was just the feeling that people were executing on my dream and I wasn't having to do much to make it happen. I could stay home with my young babies at the time. And that was an amazing feeling. Really, really amazing. Really amazing. But I think I found a way to replicate that with eBay. Man, my eBay store, am I still recording? Sorry, I just got nervous. I thought I touched the button there. And my eBay store is open 24/7, so I still get to wake up and see my sales from the night before. And for me, that's the same feeling. That's the feeling of, I just made money while I'm sleeping. And that is just as good as the employees, but for me, with way less of those downsides that I've been talking about. So like I said, that's the kind of the pro, but also the pro of having an employee is that feeling of making money when you're not working. But I found a way, and I'm going to include with all of these, is I found a way to replicate all of these with my current business without employees. And so I still feel like I'm making money both. And you might say, well, you still had to work for those listings. And that's true. And now the other way that I'm able to get that feeling in a way that I was never able to achieve in my previous business is that we are profitable. We're actually profitable. So now we have enough money to invest in, index funds and high yield savings accounts. And so every day our money is growing. And so I actually get that feeling by just keeping our life lean, keeping our business life lean, having more profits to hold on to and then invest. Like I am still making money when I sleep, not just on my eBay store, but now just on my investments from eBay. Like, I'm not spending all the money that I'm making. A lot of this money is just getting put away in tax sheltered retirement accounts and investment accounts, like whatever we've read is a good idea, I guess, at the time. Again, like I said, high yield savings accounts. For me, that's the same feeling. I'm able to replicate that feeling here. So that's the first one. The next awesome thing about being a boss, next pro, number 2, besides the feeling of making money when you sleep, that's number 1. Number 2, awesome feeling, is the ego boost. It's cool. It's cool to be able to tell people what to do. It's cool to have people call you boss, but I don't know if it's healthy. I don't know if it's actually the best thing, because there were a few employees that I felt we had a close enough relationship that they could be honest with us. At least as honest as they could, right? But it's really hard when you're paying for somebody's salary for them to be fully honest with you. It's a different kind of a relationship. It's not the same kind of relationship as family. It's not the same kind of relationship as friends. And when you're surrounded with employees, as we were for a short time in our life there, as that was kind of a big part of our life, was just managing the business and our employees. I don't know if it's healthy. Not that my ego was necessarily going out of control, although I can see that being a risk because everybody around me had to do what I told them pretty much, and often didn't feel empowered to give me critique. Even as many times as I would say, please, I'm an open book. I would try to say, as a boss, I would try to say, please give me, feedback as much as you can. I'd say, we're pretty new to this business, so any feedback would be really appreciated. But still, like, there is something flavoring that relationship. They're not fully free. Like, you have a lot of power over them. There is a power dynamic there that I didn't really respect as much at first, and I learned to respect the longer that I was a boss. And I learned to really read into small nuances in communication that people don't always feel empowered to be fully honest, but they are able to kind of communicate their feelings in different ways to their boss, because everyone does want to be heard, but it's hard to be fully honest to your boss. I can relate to that. So I guess the flip side to that is that I actually found that the ego boost was cool, but I actually think that it's more healthy to not be fully surrounded, to maybe have some balance. All right, my family's pulling up. Let me take pause for a second. All right, my family just pulled up, so I was just helping them get unloaded back in the house there. So another benefit of working from home. I just say hi, asking how swim lessons went. But yeah, we were talking about the pros, but the pros that I found ways to replicate in this current eBay business, and the pros of the feeling of making money when you're not working, when you're sleeping, the ego boost being a pro, but again, the downside to that maybe being it's actually not that great to be surrounded by people who are afraid to give you their full and honest opinion. So, number 3 pro that I have here of the idea of scaling, the idea of hiring people, is the profit potential, right? This channel is Profit First Reseller. A lot of us are here in this business focused on how much money can we make, and it would seem to make sense that you can make more when you hire people. And of course, that's true. Your profit potential is, of course, much higher if you hire employees. But there's also a other edge, I guess, to that sword. This is like a two-edged blade. I don't even know how the expression goes. I guess what I'm like stumbling over my words trying to say is that when you start a business with a lot of people involved and a lot of money involved, there's also a large potential for loss. So as you also increase your profit potential, as you grow a business, you're almost always also increasing your potential to lose money. You know, as a restaurant, we had signed into this 4-year lease at over $4,000 per month. But then we were locked into, regardless of how profitable we were from month to month, that was the responsibility that we signed up for. And it's pretty typical with commercial leases. And you know, again, payroll is a major expense for all small business. And so just recognizing that like you're also increasing the number of bills, and a lot of money was flowing through our business accounts as a restaurant, but there was very little left over at the end of the month, but a lot of stress in the meantime, making sure that everything was getting paid. And so part of the reason I think that I'm so focused with this second major business in my life here, this eBay business, part of the reason I'm so focused on profit is that I don't want to grow without profit, because that just increases the stress without the benefit that I was in this for the first place. Like, I'm here to make money for my family, you know? If I didn't have to make money for my family, I would be spending way less time doing this, at least for now, because my kids are young. I can see myself working a lot more later on in my life, but a lot of the reason that I'm working now is because I have to, and I want to make money for my family. My family needs me to provide. And that's that other thing that I realized as I started to have kids towards the tail end of this restaurant business that had grown to this large point towards the end, is that I don't actually want to take on that kind of a risk as a parent of young kids. You know, I think that it just changed my outlook on risk and reward a little bit as a parent. And I'm still allowing myself to think big now as a parent who still has entrepreneurial tendencies, but now I associate more with a freelancer where I just want to get talented. I want to become a really expert eBay seller, but also with the freedom to be able to step back and be here for my kids when they need me. So that's kind of my new goal, and to also be able to provide a financial base for our family without the risk and without the emotional roller coaster of wondering if we're going to be able to pay these bills. You know, now we're so focused on growing this eBay business without increasing expenses hardly at all. You know, we work out of our house, so we don't have to pay an extra internet bill. In fact, our business pays for a portion of our internet bill. Our business pays for a portion of our mortgage in the form of rent that we rent out to our own business. So if anything, we have negative expenses. I mean, of course, every business incurs expenses. I have to buy packaging materials and all that stuff, but we're not expanding in that same way. Like, I continue to challenge myself in this business. You know, I've thought about getting a warehouse or a storage unit so many times, but I continue to challenge myself. How much money can I make out of this space? Instead of how much money can I make in general, I've decided to give myself a constraint. My constraint is my backyard, my garage, my spare bedroom. How much can I do? Do I just have to buy smaller things? Do I have to increase my volume? It's gotten me, do I just have to get faster? Do I have to get more efficient? The answer has been yes to all of those things, right? Oh, I think I just had a bug fly into my eye. Whoop. Okay, sorry, bug. Hopefully that was just a piece of tree. There's definitely something in my eye. Yeah, anyway, I think that might be nature's way of telling me to move on. I'm just ranting over here, and it's going to take me a minute to untangle this. So I think I'm just going to finish these points and then end the video here. And so the last pro is to say the ability to affect other people's lives. And that really was positive. You know, we had this dream with our food carts in our restaurant to be serving healthy food with transparent ingredients to people, and we did that. And it was cool to get other people on board. But like I mentioned, with the fact that HR being really complicated and giving people what they need being a really complicated and unique problem in a lot of the way, as a boss and as an employer, like, yes, it's cool to be able to affect people, to pay for people's lives. But on the flip side, you're responsible for them. And I've realized that's not what I want in my life. I think that's kind of how I want to end this out here. As an introvert with entrepreneurial tendencies, I don't actually want responsibility. I want freedom. I want freedom to think and to create and to work if I want to work. But I actually like not being interrupted. And so employees was the wrong direction for me. And so that was a long lesson. That was a 7-year lesson for me, because we hired employees almost immediately in that business. And I wish that we didn't. And so it's kind of what I wanted to share. My journey as an introvert in this business here. Some thoughts. I need to get back to work. I got some cables to untangle, so I'll talk to you all soon. Profit First Reseller, this is Joe. See you in the comment section. Peace.